Hey everybody, welcome to Colony Drop, your favorite Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac.
And my name is Brian, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, from the anime to the movies to the manga to the model kits to the clothes to the food, everything, Isaac. We do it all.
Absolutely. Brian, today we have a very special topic. Not really a review, just a general glossing over. A run through of the first half of a very special series. What's that series, Brian?
It's a series that you hold near and dear to your heart, and that series is Gundam SEED.
Yes, indeed. Gundam SEED, for all you fans who might or might not remember, it takes place in the Cosmic Era, which is not the Universal Century. So this setting has a completely new set of characters, set of factions, approach to Gundam, I guess you could say. It very much feels like the One Year War by the numbers, but a lot of things are different too. Brian, we watched the first half of this series. Did you want to start off by talking about our thoughts after watching it, or is there anything else you want to talk about first?
I can give a few background facts here.
Do it.
So this show is a TV series. The original broadcast was 50 episodes, but it has been remastered in HD, and the HD remaster cuts it down to 48 episodes because it deletes the 2 recap episodes. If you watched a lot of anime, especially the longer series, sometimes they tend to have like a recap episode where it just shows scenes of what you've watched over the last 25 episodes, which are pretty useless. And so I think it was a good decision to delete those.
Yeah, but I mean, they still kind of snuck one in a way, right? They're like a court-martial episode.
Yeah. This series aired between October of 2002 through September of 2003. As far as where you can get it today, you can get it on Blu-ray. You can stream it on Funimation, which is probably where we would recommend that you stream it, given that Funimation, I think, is the only streaming service that has the new dub. The new dub was just released in I think it was November, Isaac?
Something like that, yeah. That's the one I watched.
Yeah, and it's also on Crunchyroll and Hulu, but only in subtitle only. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but those are your choices. And it used to be on Gundam Info, the official Gundam YouTube channel, but I don't see it anymore, so it looks like they took it down. And they probably took it down when they released the new dub, I would imagine.
Yeah, why wouldn't they, right?
Yeah, they got to promote that new product, Isaac.
Exactly.
You got to sell those DVDs.
You have to hear these new voices.
Yep. The last thing before we get into it, so I did go transcribe the Toonami promo again, because I think that worked well for Char's counterattack. So you ready for this one, Isaac? You can grade this on accuracy again.
Do it.
All right. Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, does all the Toonami promos, and he pronounces Kira's name differently than the new dub does. So he says Kira Yamato, and the new dub says Yamato. I always remember it as Yamato. What was it in the original dub, Isaac? Do you remember?
I want to say Yamato.
Oh, interesting. Well, Mr. Cullen says Yamato, but I will go by the new dub with Yamato. So, Kira Yamato seemed like all his other friends, but he has a secret and a deadly talent. A genetically enhanced coordinator, Kira possesses abilities far beyond his Earthling friends. Cast as protector and conqueror, Kira is unsure of either role. Battle lines are drawn and a new war emerges. Kira finds himself facing down an enemy he doesn't hate and championing a cause he doesn't understand. As Zaft and the Earth forces face off, Kira and his Gundam may be Earth's only hope or the harbinger of its demise. I feel like that's kind of very general. What do you think?
I'd say it hits enough points to be okay, but they could have done better. I don't know. Well, They really set the bar with Char's counterattack.
Yeah, that was maybe not the best description out of all their Gundam descriptions.
No, and also, I don't know, it sounds like they're putting too much emphasis on like the secret, which gets blown within like 2 episodes.
Yeah, I don't feel like that was a huge secret, right? It was just kind of like, yeah, he's coordinator. But anyway, that's the log line. And Isaac said this was sort of intended to be Gundam for a new generation of fans, which is why it mirrors, the UC timeline in many, many ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But they updated certain things to be more modern, at the time of 2002. So, like, genetic manipulation is a big theme. And I remember thinking back to those times, Isaac. Genetically modified people, food, those were big topics back then. I remember around that time I had to write an essay in college, and like half the class wrote about genetically modified foods.
And you wrote about genetically modified people called coordinators.
Actually, no, I wrote
and how
about
they were living at the plants. And nothing was being done in the Atlantic Federation.
Yeah.
And you got to be.
No, I actually wrote about low frequency sonar effect on whales, I think. But I just remember like it was a big topic, and it's kind of still is today, but back then it was like a real big deal. So that's like a big theme in this show.
I have to agree with your assessment that yes, this is very much an introduction to Gundam for people that might have missed the boat and maybe they're just coming on board now that the 2000s have started. So it is 1 year war by the numbers, a group of colonies called plants, populated by coordinators, which are genetically engineered humans. They pretty much overrun the Earth after suffering essentially an atrocity, right? Because they're attacked by Earth, the Earth's military alliance. They use nuclear weapons against them, and they managed to take out one colony. I don't know why they didn't get the other ones, but anyways.
That's a good point. Like, they only launched one missile, not like a bunch at the same time. But
right. I mean, that must have been the only one that got through, so I'm guessing the Gins were up to par at that point.
This show is interesting, Isaac, from like a lore perspective, because whereas like the original 0079, it kind of opens with a nice little background. Like, the 1 year war is raging. It's been 9 months since half the human population has died. And we don't really get that exposition until like 10 episodes or so in, where they drop all this alternate history with John Glenn on you. Do you remember? I did not remember that John Glenn was like such a big part of the cosmic era.
I remember he was pretty important. I forgot that he got assassinated.
But
I do remember him going into space, and he said, by the way, I'm able to be this amazing person because I was genetically modified.
He goes to Jupiter.
Yeah.
For like 17 years, and then he comes back and he finds a space whale, Isaac.
Yep, he brought back a space whale on what is clearly a ship that looks familiar to anyone that's seen Zeta. So that should tell you all we have to know about him. So yeah, he comes back, and people start having more coordinator babies. People start genetically engineering their kids, but that doesn't sit right with like a very sizable faction of humans who tend to call themselves naturals, and these people oppose any type of genetic modification of humans. And hate crimes start just spreading like wildfire. So eventually, anybody that's a coordinator generally goes to a plant. Not necessarily, but most countries on Earth aren't safe, so they go to these orbital colonies called plants, form their own society, their own nation, and they get attacked by Earth, or at least the nations of Earth that have formed a military alliance and want to wipe them out. Only one nuke gets through, destroys one plant's colony, and after that, the war sort of descends into a stalemate with the plants forming their own military called ZAFT, which stands for Zodiac Alliance Freedom Treaty, or Zodiac Alliance of the Freedom Treaty, and they essentially overrun pretty much what Zeon did. Like the majority of Earth, or at least a sizable part of Earth, to bog down the war into a stalemate.
Yeah, one thing that I thought that was interesting is ZAFT seems to be doing a lot better than Zeon was doing.
In what way?
Well, like when they were on Earth, for example, I think ZAFT had taken over all of the spaceports except for one.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't feel like the Federation was ever in that dire of straits.
I suppose not. But I don't remember in UC them giving like big credence to like, oh, these are the only spaceport areas we have. It almost seemed like, well, you could always kind of set one up.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
Yeah.
Like the main thing was don't lose Jabrow. Everything else is kind of will be okay, but don't you dare lose Jabrow.
Yeah, everything else is expendable, right?
Yeah, but Earth Alliance, it looked like they were down to Joshua and the one remaining mass driver that they had that can get them into space and resupply their moon base.
Yeah. I tried to summarize very briefly the first 24 episodes of the show. So again, as Isaac said earlier, we're only going to talk about the first half of the show, which under the HD remaster is the first 24 episodes. So help me out here when I get stuck, Isaac, but
I'll do it.
So this story opens in Cosmic Era 70. 11 months have passed since the Bloody Valentine tragedy, which is what Isaac just described, where the Earth Alliance nuked An agricultural plant, Isaac. It was not even a military-oriented plant.
Do you think that was on purpose? Like, was the Earth Alliance military saying, okay, we're definitely going to starve these guys out?
It's possible. It's possible.
Or was this a case of Zap was really focused on, like, protecting their population centers, and the only nuke that went through, of course, went to, like, an agricultural zone?
That's a very tragic way of looking at it. The thing that it reminded me of the most was World War II.
Uh-huh.
Now, you're the history buff here, but I don't remember Hiroshima or Nagasaki being military centers.
I don't think they're military bases per se, but from what I remember reading at the time, there was military industry there.
Got it. Okay.
A lot of military gear and stuff had to be produced by, like, civilians, so...
Yeah. Okay, that's fair, yeah.
We're talking about oranges and tangerines, I think. So.
Either way, the Bloody Valentine tragedy killed 243,000 coordinators in basically a blink of an eye, Isaac. That's a sizable number.
Yeah, but you know what? God, the plants have such low populations. Like, that's not a lot of people in a colony. We said this before when we were talking about the colonies, right? The plant design itself is so flawed because they waste so much space that could have gone to, like, if they just switched to a cylinder, they could have had a massive population. But oh well.
Yeah.
But as we'll find out later, coordinators seem to have problems with that.
Speaking of cylindrical colonies, Isaac, while the plants are that weird shape, like an hourglass shape, our story actually opens up on a O'Neill cylinder colony called Heliopolis. It opens with a Gundam Jack, very, very similar to Mobile Suit Gundam, except this time it works, Isaac.
Yeah, well, partially works.
Sort of.
90% of it works.
Yeah. 5 pretty boys Zaft pilots, Athrun, Isaac, Nicole, Dirka, and Rusty. And I'll spoilers. Only one of those 5 people have a name where you're going to die in the first episode, and I'll give you one guess as to who it is.
Poor Rusty.
Poor Rusty. You were doomed from the start.
He did his best.
So they infiltrate Heliopolis, which is a neutral colony under a third faction, which we haven't mentioned, called Orb. And Orb is going to become... well, neutral in name, perhaps. Orb is going to become very important a little later on. So they enter this colony to steal the 5 new mobile suits, who are not explicitly called Gundams, but the acronym for their operating system is Gundam, which we learn when it's turned on. These mobile suits are being secretly developed at this neutral colony. Where have you heard this plot before, Isaac?
Boy, this sounds so similar to, like, the original series. A crack military team infiltrates a cylindrical colony to try to steal a mobile suit that's under development. And would you know it, Brian? A teenage protagonist falls into the cockpit and essentially has to start fighting his way in the war.
Him and his friends find themselves, in this skirmish now, since the war was brought to their doorstep, essentially. Before he gets in the Gundam, he does shove a girl named Kigali into a shelter, and she will come back much later, but she's very important.
Unfortunately.
And before he gets into Gundam, he sees one of the Zaft pilots, Isaac, and turns out they are what?
They are former friends. Turns out they knew each other back when they were little tykes going to school. It's been a few years since they've seen each other, and this was not how they planned on running into each other again.
Nope. Athrun is very surprised to see Kira about to get into the Strike Gundam. That hesitation kind of allows Kira to get into the Gundam, basically.
That's right, and he doesn't waste any time because he goes into his little coordinator brain mode. He really does incredible for someone that's never been in a cockpit before of a military mobile suit.
Yeah, he kind of fends off the attack, just like Amuro destroyed the Zaku in 0079. But outside the colony, Isaac, we see another Earth pilot named Mu Laflaga engaging Raoul Lacuse. Raoul Lacuse is the leader of those 5 Zaft pilots. They are part of the aptly named Lacuse team. Not very creative on Zaft's part, perhaps.
He's a humble man.
And you already know this guy is up to no good, because what does he wear on his face?
He wears a mask that, dare I say, looks identical to Char's mask and Zax's mask and many other masks worn by many other antagonists in Gundam.
That's right. Rao is the first of maybe perhaps many Char clones in this timeline. And one thing that I noticed on this rewatch, Isaac, because the last time I watched Gundam Seed was in 2002, so it's been a minute. When Mu is fighting Rao in like episode 1 or 2 or 3, very, very early on, he has a new type flash. Did they add that in the remaster?
It's funny you mentioned that. I do remember hearing the new type noise, and like my ears kind of perked up. I was like, "That's not the seed nut."
yeah. I don't remember that being in the original broadcast, but maybe I'm misremembering. It has been some time.
Whether it's new or not, clearly a wink to the fans.
Yeah, and even right after that, Rao and Mu clearly have done some battles before, because Rao says him and Mu are forever connected. Dun dun dun. We'll find more out about that later. But anyway, the Gundam Jack goes well. The Zaft boys, they make off with the Gundams, well, 4 of them anyway. Kira, our hero, pilots the strike away, so he prevents 1 from being stolen. But overall, a bad day for the Earth Alliance. They lose 4 of their 5 Gundams. And also a bad day for Kira and his friends, because one of the Earth Alliance officers that Kira saved by getting to that Gundam, her name was Is Ramius, although I think the new dub pronounces it Is Ramius.
Something like that.
I'm so self-conscious of saying her name now, because I feel like it sounds different depending on who says it. How do you pronounce her name?
I could have sworn at some point, I think another officer called her like Miru, but in my head, she's always referred to as Ramius.
Ramius, okay. So Ramius, or whatever her name is, she says, you know what, thanks Kira, and thanks to you guys for saving me, but you know what, you all have to board the Archangel now, which is the new ship that was also being developed along with the Gundams. And you can't leave, sorry, because you've seen too much and it's all confidential. So tough luck. Get on the ship. And they are very upset about that. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Isaac?
That was an interesting take on it. You know, it wasn't very much like the original series where it's like, well, you got to get in this ship to survive. It's more like, thank you for saving me, but now I have to detain you because you clearly know our weapon. And they kind of lampshade this later on, and I think maybe this first 20-something episodes, the first half. I forgot what general she's meeting with. Oh, I think it was Halberton. Natara brings it up. She's like, well, we can't let these kids go, you know, even though you're saying we can discharge them because they clearly know about the secret weapon. And like, what if they tell the enemy? And then General Halberton's like, well, the enemy stole 4 of our prototypes, so clearly they know everything about them by now. And it's been months since this happened.
Oops.
So yes, I can see her thinking at the moment, but yeah, it did have a lot of flaws to it. That like, you know, really, would the children of this colony that just got attacked by Zaft run to Zaft and like reveal information or anything like that? I mean, you know, also they're a neutral nation, so you kind of just kidnapped you took hostage the citizens of a neutral nation.
Yeah.
AKA not really neutral, AKA more of an ally.
Yeah.
But we have to forgive Ramius. She was doing the best she could in the moment. She's not a pilot, but she had to get in the cockpit and try to survive, and everything went to shit.
It did. And so right after Kira fends off the first attack, our pal Rao Lakoose comes down to do his own attack, and then that's when things go real bad for the colony. A lot of mistakes were made here. Kira uses what's called the Strike Gundam can have these different what are called striker packs, and one of them is I believe they call it either the power pack or the buster pack, I don't remember. The one with the big gun. What happens when you shoot a big gun, a big beam gun in a colony?
You generally blow a hole in it because 9 out of 10 times with weapons you're gonna miss.
Yeah. Well, Kira missed big time.
Yeah. Blows a hole in the side of the colony, starts shooting that cylinder, the central support beam in the middle. Yeah,
that's the thing, right? So Kira blew a hole in it. The Gins or the Jins, whatever you want to call them, and the Archangel, they were all just shooting everywhere. Missiles were flying all over the place. That particular colony had this big, I don't know, central shaft thing, and they just blew the hell out of that thing. That thing collapsed. The whole colony collapses. And Kira gets sucked into space, and everyone in the shelter gets shot out of these escape pods, which I thought was actually pretty cool. Have we ever seen that in Universal Century Timeline?
It might have been in Zeta. I remember we actually do see a shelter ejecting and turning into like a pod that I assume a Salamis can pick up and save. It was really nice seeing that. Maybe this is an Orb only thing. I can see Orb really bending backwards, like for their own people, right? Maybe not Atlantic Federation, but anyways, yeah. It was very nice to see that some thought had been gone into the fact that you can't just get into a shelter if your colony's like being destroyed. You actually need to like jettison and like turn it into like a lifeboat get away from the colony, and they did, because that colony looked like the cat got it when by the time the episode ends.
Yeah, it was completely just shredded. There was nothing salvageable of that colony at all. So the Archangel, our heroes regroup, but so does the enemy, and they start, the Zaft boys start pursuing the Archangel. The Archangel decides to head to this fortress called Artemis that has a beam shield around it known as the Umbrella.
For all our fans, the Archangel is, of course, their white base. It's a legged white ship designed to carry mobile suits, fight in combat, be able to go to Earth, and also back.
Yeah, it's a pretty much a carbon copy of the white base, except updated. It looks, 30 years newer.
What do you think of, not to sidetrack us a bit, but thumbs up, thumbs down, lukewarm, Brian?
I thought this show did a great job of showing all of the different cannons and missile launchers and things on the Archangel. So that part I really like. I think the two front legs are just a little too big for me.
Right? Something about their positioning or the angle. I don't know. It's very...
The legs are just real in your face.
Yeah, it catches the eye the wrong way. It's like the Clydesdale's legs or something. Anyways, continue with Artemis.
Our heroes land on Artemis, and they talk to these very unfriendly Alliance people, who I was a little actually confused. You're a little bit more in the know about the political sphere here in the cosmic era. The Artemis people were wearing uniforms that were very similar, but not exactly the same as the crew of the Archangel. Were they not exactly on the same team? Were they a Eurasian base or something?
That's right. The Earth Alliance is, as its namesake, an alliance of different supernations, pretty much. There's the Atlantic Federation that controls North America. I think they took over South America too, and the United Kingdom. There's Eurasian Federation, which controls Europe and Russia. And then, some other nations also called I think African Community and Equatorial Union, things like that. Mm-hmm. Although I think actually African Community might be loyal to Zaft or a Zaft ally. But anyways, yes, the uniforms look the same because these are Earth Alliance uniforms. So they're all going to be predominantly white. Only very small details, like Eurasians having a bit more black on them in certain areas, kind of shows that, technically they're Eurasian as opposed to being, Atlantic Federation guys. I think they tend to favor a lot more yellow and red.
Yeah, I do remember the yellow on their collar or something like that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so they have this sort of impenetrable fortress because they have this beam shield, again, called the Umbrella. But the Umbrella has a big flaw, and that is that they turn it off sometimes. And it just so happens that one of the Gundams that Zaft stole is the Blitz Gundam. Isaac, what does the Blitz Gundam do?
The Blitz Gundam has a cloak, Brian. It's got something called Mirage Colloid.
That's not good when you turn your beam shield off.
No. And while we're on the subject of Mirage Colloid, may I just chastise the Earth military for, instead of putting it on a mobile suit, why didn't we put it on missiles or something? Right? We could have blown those plants out of the sky. Anyways, please continue.
So, Rao and the Zaft boys, they leave when Artemis puts the shield on, and then Artemis turns the shield off because I guess they don't want to waste power or whatever. The Zaft boys are like, all right, well, we'll just send Blitz in there. They won't be able to see him. So Blitz goes in, basically just wrecks the place. Kira fends him off. The Archangel escapes, but Artemis is basically a disaster. It's kind of blown up after the fact. So the Earth Alliance's impenetrable fortress was essentially ruined by one lone mobile suit. Kind of embarrassing. But while our heroes were on Artemis, we did find out that Athrin Zala is the son of Patrick Zala, who is a very high-ranking Zaft official. And Athrin is supposed to marry a girl named Lakoose Klein, or some of us may remember her as Lacus Klein.
I miss Lacus because that was a way better pronunciation.
Oh man, all I could think of when I heard Lakoose the first time, I was like, Lakoose is loose. That's all. I can't. I can't do it.
Our younger listeners should turn off the podcast because Lakoose has unfortunate implications in its name meaning. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of this. Apparently, they wanted this version in the redub, so I guess this is how it's supposed to be pronounced. But I don't know. not a good choice.
I did read some people discussing it. I don't remember if it was on Reddit or somewhere else, but apparently Lakoose might be the Latin pronunciation, so maybe it's more technically correct. But man, it sounds jarring when you're used to hearing Lacus.
Yeah, it's like, what? Who are they talking about? And
They
like,
said they said Lakoose for the first time, and I was like, what? Who?
Miss Lakoose. I was like, they can't mean her, can they? I was like, oh no, I'm gonna hear this for the whole season.
Yeah, she's gonna recur in the next 100 episodes of this show. So, not a throwaway character. So Lakoose is the daughter of another high-ranking Zaft official. In fact, I believe he's the Supreme Chancellor. Did I get that right, Isaac?
That's right. He currently holds the seat. He's their elected leader.
But old Patrick Zala, he's a bit of a warmonger.
Turns out Chairman Siegel Klein, Lakoose's dad, he's a moderate. So he's as much as the war's going on, he really would like peace to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, though. So our Archangel friends leave Artemis. They're essentially trying to get to Earth or the moon at this point, just trying to kind of get away from Raul Crusae's team. Because remember, the Archangel didn't exactly launch with a full crew. At this point, Kira's friends are like heavily responsible for manning this ship, basically exactly like the White Base from 0079. And they're kind of running low on supplies. They're running low on weapons, basically everything, and they're getting hit. They're getting damaged. They need to find shelter, whether that's on the moon base or on Earth. But on their way to finding supplies, they happen to find someone in an escape pod, and that someone is Lakoose, the girl we just learned about. Bit convenient, Isaac.
Yeah, apparently she decided to go for a pleasure cruise on her yacht, and it was attacked by like local space pirates. So her little escape pod jettisoned, and yeah, God, she comes off as so naive. I don't remember her being this naive in the original series, but like they open the pod and she's like, "It's a pleasure to meet you. Oh, you happen to be from Earth and all this stuff. And, gee, I sure hope everyone on my hollowed out yacht with like the massive damage is okay."
Turns out they're not. They're all dead.
Yeah, we meet our naive pink little pop star princess that has no she might be my greatest criticism of the series, because I think she just drags it down so much compared to the original Mobile Suit Gundam. There was really nobody like her that was just this naive.
I know you're not a fan of Lala from the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Do you dislike Lacus Lakoose more than Lala?
They're completely different characters. I dislike Lakoose more.
Wow,
yeah, I'll say that.
That's big. Okay.
Yeah. Say what you will about Lala, but she was a combat pilot.
Yeah, that's fair. So the Archangel becomes under attack again from the Lacus team, because that's what they do. They're trying to sink this ship.
I love how you put a lot of like Francophile pronunciation into that one.
His name is just so fun to say. I'm gonna say it as much as I can and keep pronouncing it in a terrible French way.
Are you gonna go to like restaurants when they reopen and you'll be like, you'll look at the menu and you'll be like, "I'll have the Le Creuset." The waiter would be like, "There's nothing on that, sir." And you'd be like, "Of course you wouldn't have that here."
Peasants, all of you.
I'll go somewhere else for Le Creuset.
So they get in another big fleet battle, and this fleet battle just happens to include the father of one of Kira's friends on board, whose name is Flay. She is a bit crazy. I don't know, how would you describe Flay at this point, Isaac?
She wasn't that crazy before that, but I mean, yes, she's a bit of a high-strung person. I think she's got a crush on Kira, although I don't know, she's kind of playing the men, right? She's playing the young men.
A little bit.
Playing wide and left and right.
They should name Flay Lakoose. Flay is Lacooser than Lakoose is.
Pretty much. She's loose as Lakoose. Anyways, yes, they're witnessing the battle, kind of partaking in it, but not as much as the other ships. And it goes poorly, doesn't it, Brian?
Yeah. Flay's father is on one of these Earth Alliance ships, and he doesn't make it. The ship gets destroyed, basically in front of her. And it was very unfortunate because she knew that the battle wasn't going well, and she ran into the bridge and said, "Hey, we need to offer up Lakoose as a hostage to get them to stop firing." And as soon as she made that suggestion is basically when her father's ship went up in a ball of fire.
He was in the shuttle bay, remember? They were like minutes or seconds from evacuating him.
Yep, didn't make it.
No. I also, if I remember correctly, I think Natara, who's the second officer on the Archangel, she backed her up too, right? She was like, "Yeah, this is kind of the right move for a terrible situation."
Yeah, we haven't talked about Natara yet, but Natara Badgeroo, who just has like this weird but like badass name, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, she's one of my favorite characters. She's so cool.
Yeah, I think she's great. She was the one who actually launched the Archangel out of Heliopolis. And right away, although Ramius is higher ranked than Natara, you can tell that at some point these two are going to be on the opposite sides of the conflict, or of a conflict, I'll say.
Yeah, they agree on a lot of things, but they disagree on a lot of things also. Very different ways to approach.
Right after Flay's father's ship goes up in flames, Natara ends up just getting on the comm anyway and basically outing that they have Lakoose and telling Zaf to stop firing, which was pretty ballsy of her, Isaac. I don't know. Is this wouldn't that get you like, I don't know, court-martialed or something?
You mean for Flay or Natara?
No, for Natara.
Oh,
because she actually did it. Remember, she was like, "Attention, Zaf, we have Lakoose Klein."
I think the only reason she did it is later on, maybe the same episode or something, the episode after. She does say that, like, that technically was kind of taking a hostage in a time of war, but there's certain situations where it could, it actually works. So I'm sure there was some law she knew about, since in a court-martial episode, we clearly see that she's familiar with the law way more than, like, Moo.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
So I think she knew at least a few laws that would back her up on the situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And speaking of that court-martial, so Kira does not like using Lakoose as a hostage. So him and his pals sneak her out, and they turn her over to Athrun in the middle of the night, basically. And one of the funniest parts of this first 24 episodes, I thought, was when Rao launched to like go intercept Kira once Athrun had Lakoose back. And Lakoose told him, like, "Rao, stop. You can't do that here because we are in the middle of the remains of Junius 7 and no one can fight here. Please return your mobile suit to the ship." And like, he had to listen to her, and I was like, oh, somebody got told.
To his credit, he does listen to like the commanding officer, He's not too much of a hothead.
He got owned by the bubblegum pop princess. So from there, our crew, they are now attempting to go to Alaska. I believe there's a base there or something they were trying to get the strike combat data, or get the strike there, just in general. And the Earth fleet is basically prioritizing their, the Archangel's ability to do so. So they place the Archangel in the back of this fleet so as to defend them. But Rao and the Zaft boys just kind of don't give an F, Isaac.
No, they don't. I think even with like fewer ships also, they're able to attack this pretty sizable Earth Alliance fleet and almost kill every ship, I think.
Pretty much. It reminded me a lot of the Battle of Loom, just very not quite as big, right? I mean, I guess we should say the Earth Alliance, their mobile suits, well, they don't really have any. First of all, they have these mobile armors called Mobiuses, and they suck. They're not very good.
Yeah. You have to be pretty lucky. Even their capital ships are terrible. Their capital ships like out Salamis a Salamis, and I don't mean that in like a good way. Like, these look way more fragile than like Salamis is. Yeah,
so the Zaft boys, they're just tearing up this Earth fleet, and poor Kira over here, he's fighting all the Zaft boys by himself. I don't know. I actually, through this whole first 24 episodes, Isaac, the Archangel has been very undermanned, like underpowered. They've got like the strike, and that's pretty much it. Did you feel the same way? Like how are the Zaft boys not winning?
I mean, a lot of it's also Moo, because he's such an ace pilot. He really helps out. How can you chalk it up?
I don't know. I mean, maybe the Zaft boys just aren't very good.
Yeah, I mean, they're using mobile suits they just got, so there's still a bit of a learning curve, even if they are, genetically enhanced, blah, 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 and all that. The Archangel clearly has way better defenses than the run-of-the-mill Earth Alliance ships, so I think a lot of credit gets spread out on the side of our heroes.
Yeah. So the battle doesn't go well for the Earth Alliance ships. Most of them get destroyed, as Isaac mentioned, and the strike gets locked in a duel with the Dual Gundam and the Buster Gundam, and all three of them are sort of not able to get back to their ships, or are about to not be able to get back to their ships. Dual and Buster, in fact, do not make it back to their ships, so they have to re-enter Earth's atmosphere by themselves. The Archangel goes back and gets Kira back into the ship, but by doing so, they are thrown off course, and instead of landing in Alaska, in Alliance territory, they land in Zaft territory, Isaac.
Yeah, I think they'll land in North Africa, which is part of like Zaft's little ally and nation state called like African Community or something like that. So they're gonna, just like the White Base, they're gonna have to do their little journey around the world to actually get where they're supposed to go.
Yep, and if you've seen 0079, you can see how closely this is mirroring the plot, right? We started in space with the Gundam Jack. You have a ragtag crew trying to get to safety, ending up re-entering the atmosphere. There's even the atmospheric fights are even very similar in the fact that the Gundam, had to re-enter to some degree on its own, which is a big thing, right, for Mobile Suit. So our Archangel crew lands in Africa. The Duel and the Buster also land in Africa, but Rao and his team, they stay in space. So Rao, Atherin, and Nicole. Atherin and Nicole stay in space with Rao for now. So now you've just got two of the Zaft boys now pursuing the Archangel. And the new enemy, what would you call him? The Zaft antagonist on Earth is, he has a special name. What is his name, Isaac?
He's the Desert Tiger, if I'm correct, right, Brian?
He is. And I gotta say, I loved the Desert Tiger on the rewatch. I thought he was one of the best characters. I don't know how you felt.
Couldn't get enough of him. Really nice guy.
Yeah. I also thought he had one of the best voice actors in the show, at least for the dub. I thought his was, outside of maybe Natara, I thought maybe his VA was the best, which is a shame because he's not in the show the whole time, right? He's only in, 5, 6 episodes?
Sorta. Yeah, sorta. I'll say that.
The Desert Tiger is sort of this, he's basically the Raoul de Crusade of the Africa region. But ironically, he hates Raoul de Crusade. And the Archangel crew kind of engages his army, I'll call it, a few times. It's very hard to fight in Africa. Where they are is a desert, so these mobile suits are trying to step on sand. They're sinking. Kira has to make a bunch of adjustments. But of course, he gets his special nut mode, his special seed mode, and ends up, kind of out-dueling basically all of the Desert Tiger's forces. At this point, the Archangel meets back up with Kigali, and she's now part of the Desert Dawn, which is, I don't know, how would you describe the Desert Dawn, Isaac? Are they a paramilitary civilian force?
They're very much a resistance, almost bare bones. Like, they have certain equipment, but nothing close to like mobile suits.
They got a lot of heart and a lot of spirit, but maybe not a lot of brains, considering they drive basically jeeps and armored vehicles into battle against these mobile suits. That just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, but they're trying to defend their homeland, their way of living. They're very prideful. They said, all we want to do is be left in peace and all that. So they'll keep fighting, even though it's a bit of a one-sided battle, to say the least. Yeah,
and so Kira ends up sort of befriending Kigali, and they go into this town together, and they end up encountering the Desert Tiger himself, Andrew Waldfeld. Waldfeld is a very sharp individual, so he recognizes that Kira is the pilot of the strike, and he invites them back to their headquarters, and they have this sort of philosophical discussion about battle. In this story, Waldfeld is basically functioning as Ramba Rao. Did you get that as well?
Yeah, pretty much, but I don't know, very much a younger Ramba Rao, not too involved in the ongoing intrigue that Zeon had going on. Andrew looks like he's clearly running things almost autonomously.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
So I think that conversation has a big effect on Kira in terms of his outlook. How would you describe Waldfeld's philosophy, Isaac? It's basically when is enough enough? How do you find enough in war?
I'd almost say he's like a punch clock villain. He's not really ideologically into it. He's willing to do his duty, but he really makes sure there's not a lot of death for the civilians in the way. There's not a lot of collateral damage. A well-meaning villain, I guess you could say.
He's a great tactician. He basically outmaneuvers the Archangel pretty much every step of the way. Kira does end up defeating him in sort of a climactic battle where, Kira does, use his seed mode, his walnut mode. After that, the Archangel kind of sets off with Kigali in tow, which I thought was interesting. She basically just forces her way onto the Archangel.
Yeah, at that point they'd run into each other too many times, so she might as well just come along to continue the resistance now that they actually liberated their little corner of North Africa.
Yeah, but she's hiding a secret, Isaac.
She sure is.
Our Archangel crew is pursued again by the Rao Lakoose team, and once the Desert Tiger has been eliminated, Rao, Atherin, and Nicole descend onto Earth to go help out the other two Zaft boys, who the other two Zaft boys, Isaac and Dirka, were pretty useless in that Desert Tiger battle.
Yeah. I don't even remember them doing much. You know, it was all Andrew and his co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of Andrew and his co-pilot, what did you think of like the Baku's and Andrew's mobile suit?
Oh man. Okay, look. I think Andrew Waldfeld was a great character. I thought he had presence, but I cannot take those Baku's seriously.
Yeah, it's very Zoids.
Oh, that was my exact thought. So if there's listeners who have not watched Gundam SEED, the Baku's are basically four-legged mobile suits that kind of glide around. They're made for, I guess, desert combat, but they look like dogs, you know?
Yeah, like hounds.
Did they do this because Zoids was popular around this time?
That's a good question. I didn't think of that.
I don't know. I couldn't take it seriously, which is a shame, again, because I think Waldfeld was a great character. Now, Waldfeld had like a special Baku. It was called a Lagao, I think. His looked like better.
Yeah, it had the bone in its mouth that was like a beam.
It did, yeah. But his even looked more like a Zoid than the Baku did.
Yeah, in a bad way too. Like it was well, there's no good Zoids. But yeah, it was very I don't know, too action figure.
Yeah, I remember as soon as they got to the desert, I was like, oh man, I forgot about the Bakus. Like I forgot about this section of the show. And I was like, oh man, it might be a little rough to get through these episodes. But again, I did enjoy Waldfeld as a character. It was really just, it was hard to watch those combat scenes. Not that they were bad combat scenes in general. It was just looked kind of silly, you know, when the strike is like stabbing a dog with a beam saber. And I was like, oh, this is kind of strange.
Zaft put together its best minds, and they said, in the desert, we need giant robot dogs. That is the best option.
Yep. So again, the Archangel takes off with Kigali in tow, along with her escort. I forget his name. He's also hiding a secret.
Yeah.
And of course, Rao and team pursue them, and they get into another big battle, which was very abrupt. Did you notice that, Isaac?
Yeah, they're always going to be nipping at their heels.
Yeah. So we flash into this battle, and the Zaft boys are giving the Archangel hell. Again, Kira and Mu are trying to fight off these 4 Gundams, you know, with 1 Gundam and 1 Mobius. And the Archangel's basically had it at this point. It's pretty damaged. Things were not looking good. And they're getting a little bit off course, and they're starting to go into Orb territory. So again, Orb is the faction that controlled Heliopolis from the beginning of the story. And Orb is not, at least in appearance, very thrilled about this incursion into their territory. So they send out their whole fleet, Isaac, and they say, hey, we're going to fire on you if you don't leave. But then turns out Kigali here has been hiding like an ace up her sleeve.
She turns out to be a princess of Orb, the princess of Orb, the daughter of the leader, Lord Izumi.
And she is not the one that you'd expect to be a princess. I mean, she is, for a lack of a better term, a complete tomboy, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they even thought she was a boy at a few points in the series.
Oh, multiple times.
Yeah.
That was like a recurring gag that everyone did not expect her to be a girl. I think Kira, Mu, and Atherin all said, oh, you're a girl, and to some extent. But my favorite one was when Atherin did it, when her and Atherin were stuck on that island, and she said, why are men always so surprised?
I mean, it's hidden well. We'll say that, Kigali.
So basically, Orb's fleet gets the Zaft fleet to kind of retreat, and they take in the Archangel and basically put out a statement saying, the Archangel has already left our waters. But that is not true. Instead, Orb has taken in the Archangel for repairs. You know, obviously with Kigali in tow, they had no intentions of ever destroying the Archangel. That's kind of where we leave off, right, at the first half?
Pretty much, yeah. That's the end of it. They've arrived in what they think is safe waters.
Dun, dun, dun.
We met all our characters. We know who has Gundams, who doesn't. We've seen very much how much is like the 1 year war by the numbers. And now, the wait until the next combat.
So let's talk about the characters, Isaac. How about our main character, Kira Yamato?
Oh, Kira.
And we're going to cut it there for this episode. Next week, we'll continue our review of Gundam SEED's first half, including the characters, the mobile suit designs, and a bunch of probing questions for Isaac. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a comment on Twitter and on Instagram, both at Colony Dropcast, as well as on our YouTube channel. Until then, keep those Minovsky reactors warm and stay safe out there, everybody.